Hello, welcome back my favorite movement enthusiast to today's session of deep squat mobility, which you can use as a warm-up for your squat sessions, as a mobility routine that you use to advance your squat sessions, or maybe just a lower body mobility routine. Perfect for people who want to work from the deep squat for the deep squat in the deep squat. So if you're ready, let's get right into it. We're gonna combine hip mobility with posterior chain mobility and maybe a little bit of anterior chain mobility as well, while strengthening and adding a little bit of endurance to all of these muscles. So let's start switching between the pike pose and the deep squat. Now, the range of motion for everyone is gonna be different. So if you can only touch your fingertips to the ground, that is absolutely amazing. If you can't even get this far and that is the end of your range of motion, then that is also pretty amazing. If you go all the way down into the deep squat and your heels start raising, that means you need a little bit more ankle mobility for this position, but that's why we're working on this. So either you are on your tiptoes, if you can, feet flat, if you can, bring your hands all the way down, and we're gonna switch 3 more times. All the way down, push your pelvis forward, all the way up, complete extension, all the way down, push forward, and all the way up, complete extension. Let's go through our final repetition. All the way down, deep squat, all the way up, and we're gonna hold this pike stretch for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 before we move on to our next exercise. Now, if you have enough strength in your hip flexors and core, bring your hands behind your head. If you don't, then having your hands on the ground will help you out a little bit with the balance part as well as the strength and endurance part. So we're going to start with our hands right here, and we're going to do external rotations for our hip as well as hip flexor stretches by pushing forward into this pseudo hip thrust. To the left, external rotation in the left hip joint, and to the right, external rotation in the right hip joint, and stretch in our hip flexors, maybe even in your quads if you are too short there. Let's switch it up to the left side, and you can extend the other leg completely to add a little bit of quadriceps flexion as well. Let's move to the right, and we're going to repeat 1 more time for both sides. All the way to the left, all the way to the right, complete extension, and reverse. We're going to switch it up from external to internal rotations. First, asymmetrically, left side, right side, left side, right side, and then we're going to combine internal rotation on both sides by crossing over our bent legs. Now we're working a lot on our ankle mobility by rolling over our toes, lengthening our foot musculature, and the more you push your heel backwards, the more pull you're gonna have in your Achilles tendon as well as your calf musculature. So let's cross over to the right side, cross over to the left side. The more upright you stay, the more strength you're gonna require and the more balance you're gonna be working on. So now that we've crossed over, let's combine some internal rotation with some external rotation, and this time we're going to roll over our feet completely to lengthen our tibialis and push it all the way down on the ground, as well as reversing the entire movement. Internal rotation on the left side, external rotation in the right hip joint, and add some lumbar spinal rotation as well before you use your strength to get yourself back up again. Once again, we're rolling over our toes for all of that amazing ankle mobility. Internal right, external left, lumbar rotation, and reverse. We've got 2 more repetitions. All the way to one side, all the way to the other side. Now we can add a little bit more spinal mobility with even more lumbar as well as thoracic rotation by bringing our upper body all the way down, lengthening our hip flexors, quads, and obliques as well before we use our own strength to get up and get down again and add complete spinal rotation. Move down, move up, and you've noticed we're working really dynamically. If we are too fast, then by all means you can just pause the video, do your exercises, and then come back to it, or you can just slow down and do 1 or 2 repetitions only for each exercise, because we're not going to take a break and we're going to do the whole thing in one sitting. So to the right, 1 more time, to the left, one more time, and reverse back to the middle. Now from here we're gonna switch into semi hip thrust. Almost bring your knees down before pulling them in again, and we're gonna increase the range of motion of this just the tiniest bit with every repetition. Move forward, backwards, extend. Move forward, backward, extend even more, and this time we're gonna go into full extension as well as full hip thrust. Knees down, push forward, lengthen your hip flexors symmetrically this time before you reverse, roll over your toes backwards, extend into the pike position or forward fold before we move again. Knees down, push forward, reverse, extend. Knees down, push forward, reverse, extend, squat deep, hip thrust, reverse, extend, and squat deep. Now we're gonna switch back into the resting squat, pull our shoulders in all the way as much as we can. Now we're gonna open up our arms, pushing our legs backwards, opening the insides of our hips, and we're gonna bring our head all the way down to our chest for more spinal flexion, rounding our back as much as we can, adding some core flexion as well. Before we bring both our knees down, I'm gonna just switch perspectives here. Lay down, feet flat. Now we're gonna lengthen our hip flexors after we've gone through all of these exercises, which strengthen them as well as work on their endurance. Now we can lay down as much as we can. Now we have multiple levels for this one. If you're feeling too much of a stretch here, then this should be more than enough. If you don't feel anything here, we can move down on our elbows, push your pelvis upward, and if you don't feel any stretch here as well, then you can lay down all the way, lengthening your hip flexors, lengthening your quads, and lengthening your tibialis as well for additional ankle mobility, which we always need in a deep squat position. So we're gonna take 1 or 2 deep breaths. And sit up again, and done. So now we've gone through rotational hip mobility, we've gone through general hip mobility for our hip flexors as well as our posterior chin, lengthening both sides as well as strengthening both sides, working a little bit on our endurance, because if you've done the whole thing, then you have noticed it is pretty intense for our leg musculature, and we've worked a little bit on our flexibility as well, increasing our range of motion over time. Now if you use this as a warm-up routine for your squats, please leave out the static stretch for your hip flexors, and if you use it as a normal mobility routine or warm-up routine, you can do the whole thing, do it on a daily basis. You're gonna have even stronger and even more flexible legs, as well as much safer ankles, knees, and hip joints, which over time, the older we get, is very, very important. Now with that said, sadly that's all the time I've left for you today. However, if you like the video and subscribe, and check out other videos on this channel, because we literally have new ones every single day. So until tomorrow, Captain Cairo, peace out.